was, and I really loved him, so rest in peace. All that being said, let's bring in one of the new Turks and one of the young Turks, the man, the myth, the Mr. Espresso. He is our friend, Marc Farzetta. How you doing, Farzetta?
I don't even have my espresso cup down here. Well, I feel like a barbarian, my friend. Don't even have espresso. Jeez Louise. How are you, buddy? Nice to see you.
That's got to be one of the first times you haven't had espresso. You drink it every day, right?
Honestly, I usually have about 4 a day.
4 a day?
One before my show in the morning, one after my show, and then middle of the day, I come home, I take I do some work, and then I'll, take my siesta to pass out for an hour or two because I'm up late doing games and stuff, man. So I need a little siesta in the middle of the day, and then I wake up and I usually have 2 more espresso. Yeah.
How in the world do you get any rest when you're drinking that much jet fuel?
I don't know if it's the same. What do you call it? Brand or mix or roast as you get in the old country, but it still works pretty well.
Got you, man. All right. Let me ask you a couple questions here. Jalen Hurts. Do you think Jalen Hurts needs his wheels and his legs to be considered an elite passer in this league? If he doesn't use his wheels, is he elite? I say he's not elite. But if he uses his wheels, he is like Lamar. Both of those guys can't win ball games without their wheels. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I agree. The thing is, whenever I think about Jalen Hurts as a mobile quarterback or as a running quarterback, I think about just an incredible quarterback when he's using all the intangible, all the strengths that he has, all his tools. Like, all right, fine. Then Patrick Mahomes can't throw sidearm anymore. Patrick Mahomes can only throw over the top. You know what I mean? Like, if you start limiting people, of course, they're not as great as they can be. And one of the greatest lies they told us with Jalen Hurts going into last year, and I was excited for it. Like, I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I took it hook, line, and sinker, friend. When Nick Sirianni said with his mouth, we're going to embrace the uniqueness of Jalen Hurts' game, I thought, that is beautiful. That is That's poetry. That is gore. I love that because that means you're not going to have him run too much. You're not going to have him throw too much. You're going to let him be him. And I thought that's the best way to put that because we're not talking about limiting his reps, limiting his running. We're talking about embracing the uniqueness of Jalen Hurts' game. And I thought, all right, there we go. And then I didn't see that. And I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was because of a crappy game plan, crappy play calling. If it was just an awful year for Jalen Hurts, if he wasn't healthy, but I didn't see that uniqueness. And don't get me wrong, the tush push and the brotherly shove and the rushing touchdown, all that's fine. But I'm talking about what really made him special. Now, to break it to the way you're relating it to his passing, and I get it. No, he can't be an elite passer without that ability because one of the reasons guys get open is because Jalen Hurts is able to buy that time behind the line of scrimmage, keep his eyes down the field most of the time, and be able to hit that open receiver. So that helps his passing game. The threat of his athleticism when it comes to him behind the line of scrimmage opens up doors for him as a passer. Now, he can still drop back and he can still sling it, but in terms of the big play, if you're a defense, you don't want to see him escaping the pocket and being able to buy time because the wide receivers he's throwing to are obviously pretty good as well. So for me, no, but if you limit any quarterback from something they do more special than somebody else, it's going to make them, obviously not as good a player.
Farzy, you're going to think that I'm absolutely off my rocker when I say this here when it comes to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown here. Now, look, I don't want anybody to get the assessment not having good players on your football team is important. But don't you think having players like that on your football team doesn't allow you to develop your quarterback to be where he's going to be more of a progression reader? I mean, Greg Cosell came on the other day or had a soundbite the other day that we played that he says Jalen Hurts struggles at reading defenses. And he said that he struggles reading defenses. Now, all of a sudden, look at Jordan Love. You don't know where he's throwing the ball. There's no primary receiver there. Don't you think it's better in the development where you have people that don't have that one primary receiver? because that's kind of what they're doing now in Buffalo. They took the primary receiver away. They want him to be a better quarterback because look at Kansas City. They took the primary receiver away. They took the primary receiver away in Green Bay. Look at how those quarterbacks are developing into being the quarterbacks that spread the ball around. I mean, when you have two dudes you're going to, if I'm a coordinator, I know I'm going to those two guys. There was nobody in the middle of the field after Goddard got hurt. You threw to the numbers. You became predictable. You stopped running the ball. And before you know it, and you weren't even running the ball with your quarterback. How are you developing your quarterback to become a good progression reader if you're trying to teach him from the pocket when he can't handle the blitz, third and hits on the quarterback and blitz? How does that help you when you're trying to develop that kid into something that you want him to be, and that is a pocket passer?
I'd eventually like to see him be more comfortable in the pocket and be able to climb the pocket. I think that's a huge thing that he has to
I'm not
improve
trying
upon.
to say he's better off without them. I'm just saying.
Right, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
because
saying when it comes to like developing him.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not interested in developing Jalen Hurts right now. I'm interested in the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. And when it comes to the receiving core, they have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl with that receiving core. The Jalen Hurts development right now, as far as developing goes, he needs to develop under Kellen Moore and what Kellen Moore wants him to do. And they need to be simpatico. They need to be on the same page. They need to be all good. And when it comes to the receivers that he's throwing to, it's up to Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts to make sure that ball is distributed. I find it very, not evenly, but fairly. And one of all the things, in adding Saquon Barkley to this mix, I find it really fascinating. You have had great seasons the last 2 years in terms of the guys to spread the ball around to. 1,000-yard receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They have gotten theirs over the last 2 years. This hasn't been, 1,800 yards for A.J. Brown and 700 yards for Devontae Smith. This has been amazing the way this ball has been spread out. Kenny Gainwell or DeAndre Swift, those guys getting their touch. Miles Sanders getting his touches 2 years ago. DeAndre Swift getting his touches, exactly. These guys getting those touches and now taking that away and bringing in another dynamic player in Saquon Barkley, you already have that experience in spreading the football around. So that, to me, is not as much of a concern. As far as the overall development, I'll wait on it. If that means down the line, after you've already signed these guys, both wide receivers, to long-term deals, and you have Saquon Barkley for maybe 3 years here in Philadelphia, it seems like every contract really that you see is 2 years, but 3 years possibly here with Saquon Barkley, that's a great thing. I'll wait on the development. I'll wait for him to get settled in under Kellen Moore's system. I'll wait for him to become a better quarterback. But yes, there's no doubt in my mind that when people look at this, it's not just about the development of Jalen Hurts. Yes, he has things to improve upon. But for me, if he's slinging it to Brown, Smith, Barkley, dumping it off the line of scrimmage for Saquon Barkley, and they're getting big plays out of it, that looks like pretty good development to use what's at your disposal. Down the line in his career, and we'll get there someday, down the line in his career, we'll see how much he developed. But right now, it's just about winning now. I don't want to – he's not a project. I'm not looking at him to develop as much as I am for him to improve. And you could say that's splitting hairs, which I know is a funny thing for a bald man to say, but I think that's what is most relevant to the upcoming season.
How about this one here? Tell me what you make of this trend. In 2021, Jalen Hurts ran the football for an average of 5.7 yards per play. The next year, he ran the ball for 4.9 yards per play. So let's put that in perspective. In the first 2 years the starting year of 21 and the year he played really well, he averaged basically 5 yards a carry. In one of those years, he almost averaged 6 yards a carry. That, to me, is undefensible. When you got a guy with only 6 turnovers and you got a guy that's throwing for 3,700 yards and you got a guy in there where every time he touches the ball and takes off, he's gaining 6 yards or 5 yards a carry. This past season, that number went down to 3.3 yards a carry. So he went from 6 yards a carry to 3.3 yards a carry. And that's a trend in the last 3 years. Personally, Mark, I think that's how they're coaching him. They're coaching him that way. And to me, this is where the special starts to get taken out of the soup a little bit here, is that when you start taking that item out of it, if I'm a linebacker, when he's gaining 6 or 5 yards of play, I have to sit in there because this guy gets an open space. He's gaining 6 or 5 yards of play.
Mm-hmm.
This past season, I didn't fear that because he was either making business decisions, the Eagles didn't want him to run, either the play calling wasn't where it was, all of that, the injury, all of that played a factor. So to me, the special's getting taken, like I said, out of the soup a little bit here. Do you think you're going to see more of that trend going this way and going the way that it's going right now, where he's going to be less effective in running the ball? Because I don't think they want to coach him that way any longer. You took an element away from his game. This is the trend.
I think they realized the epic mistake they made last year. And like I said, the biggest lie that they told us was when Nick Sirianni spoke into a microphone and said the words, "Embrace the uniqueness of Jalen's game." No, you didn't. You did not do that. And the numbers you pointed out there.
The numbers speak to that.
The numbers you pointed out absolutely speak to that. The other thing is, okay, how much experience did Brian Johnson have calling plays again? Oh, none? Cool. That's fun to do that with your recently minted franchise quarterback. And, is Nick Sirianni some offensive genius when it comes to game planning? Oh, he's not? Okay, yeah. I'm not just going to blame Jalen Hurts. That's why last year when I would talk about Jalen Hurts and why there was the struggles, I would talk about this kind of quad of blame when it came to Jalen Hurts' struggles. One, obviously, Jalen Hurts himself, who take accountability, certainly. Then the other, Jeffrey Lurie in the analytics department of pass. And then also Howie Roseman in terms of the influence he had on the game, and Nick Sirianni when it came to his game plan and calling plays so basically the coaching staff, Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni. If Brian Johnson is calling plays dictated from the game plan, which by him being let go and Nick Sirianni being retained and losing power over offense, essentially, and going to Kellen Moore, kind of shows you that the Eagles are admitting their own mistake, giving that much power to Nick Sirianni. And when I say that much power, that was, let's not forget, dwindling responsibilities for Nick Sirianni, who started out as the play caller, then wasn't. Game planned, now he's not. That just shows you that they realized the mistake they made by giving that trust to Nick Sirianni. They want him to be Paulie Pom-Poms. They want him to be Nick Chiriani, as people call him on my show. And they don't want him to have really final say over anything when it comes to the actual game plan. That goes to Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore's responsibility now is to tap back into that uniqueness of Jalen Hurts' game. For me, that is going to be the defining moment of success or failure in this Eagles season. And as you and I have talked about many times before, if you're a Jalen Hurts lover, this season is for you. If you're a Jalen Hurts hater, this season is for you, because there are no excuses this season. I don't want to hear anything about the lack of being on the same page at Kellen Moore. He needs 2 years in an offense. If they didn't have the weapons that they had, I'd say, okay, yeah, I understand. He needs time to develop this offense. Oh, hey, look, you've been around the block there, Jalen Hurts. Now you got this talent around. You got the talent in the backfield. There is no excuses about why you can't put up numbers the same that you did 2 years ago. And I think the Eagles are realizing that. They have realized that. That's why they have brought in essentially 2 head coaches, one for the offense and one for the defense. That's why, and that's how I think Jalen Hurts is going to have that bounce back year, is because he's got the best team around him to have him put him in a position to be successful.
Couple last ones here for you. Okay, Marc, and I'm going to use an analogy in our business. Don't you think you have more control over your career instead of being with a partner on the air, where you have more control? That when you do partner radio, this is why I've only done it once, is that you have that guy in the building next to you, and they're going to evaluate you two together. And to me, I always had a problem with that, because if I'm going to drive the ship into an iceberg, I'm going to drive it into an iceberg. I don't want that guy driving my ship into an iceberg.
Yeah.
So my point then goes over to Nick. Can you really have a relationship as a coach where you have your entire coaching career in the hands of the offensive coordinator and his success? Can that relationship work if you have no say over your fate of how you are going to be retained or not retained? Whether what it looks like, you have no, even if they get to a wild card, say they get to a wild card, they lose, the team looks a little better. Somebody's going.
Yeah.
Because of the money you're spending on offense. You're spending $180 million on offense. Someone's going and going to have to pay the rent for this. Can that relationship work?
Long term? Hell no.
How about just
not even one yet? No. Here's what sucks. Here's what really sucks. If you don't like Nick Sirianni to the point where you don't want him around, then that means you got to root for the Eagles to be bad, because they're not firing a head coach at 5-1 and promoting the offensive coordinator to head coach. They got to be 1-5. They got to be even 1-4. They got to have a really bad start to that. 0-5, whatever you want to call it. They would have a really bad start to the season, and then you have to promote Kellen Moore to be the head coach of the football team, and that's the only way you could really have, I see, sustained success. Now, the other side of that is you still root for the Eagles. You say, I don't care about the coaching staff, I just want them to win. Well, then let's say they win, they go to a Super Bowl again, and they win or lose the Super Bowl, whatever. If they lose the Super Bowl, they're still not firing Nick Sirianni. And then you know what's going to happen after that? In that week between, or the 2 weeks, after the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, Kellen Moore is going to go on about a dozen head coaching interviews. He's going to get another gig, and then you're in the same vicious cycle that you were in over the last 3 seasons, really. So that, for me, is not something I'm looking forward to. Would I like just sustainability? Absolutely, I'd like that. But the only way you're really going to get that is if Kellen Moore is the one sticking around here and not Nick Sirianni. That's the only way. You're not going to have another offensive coordinator, 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years. 4, excuse me. It would be 4 offensive coordinators. That is bonkers. So if I hate to put any one person, player, whatever, before the team, coach or player or front office, whatever the case may be, but that's really what you're looking at right now. If you don't want Nick Sirianni here, you got to root for a bad start to the year. And it's not just that. It's also getting bounced out of the playoffs early.
Nick Caserio told me the other day, expectations don't win you ball games. So I'll throw this at you here. You think this football team, this football roster heading into training camp is better than the 22 roster?
22 roster. No, not yet. I really got to be sold on it. I mean, you're talking about a stacked defensive line in 2022, and you certainly don't have that this year. It's the thinnest I've seen the position. You're really banking a lot on Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter for a full season. So defensively, I do see a huge drop-off. Offensively, look, I have a lot of confidence that Cam Jurgens will go in there and do everything physically strong and physically well that Jason Kelsey did. The question I have is the communication with his quarterback, and that's kind of important. So I need to see that. I need to see all that come together. Also, I haven't seen Tyler Steen play right guard for an extended period of time. Now, I would love to just have unbelievable and I do have unbelievable confidence in what Jeff Stoutland brings to the table there, but the players on the field got to play. And I haven't seen him do that at the positions for an extended period of time that they're going to be playing this season. So 2022, on paper, to use that phrase, better than 2024 going into this season. The biggest difference is obviously Saquon Barkley in terms of the plus that Saquon Barkley brings to the table there in the backfield. But Miles Sanders wasn't a slouch by any means. I know he was back of Penn State.
Yards.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. But yeah, 2022, mostly the biggest gap is the defensive line. That's the biggest gap for me.
Maybe even the linebackers. I mean, think about it. 281 tackles between White and
TJ Edwards. Yeah.
Edwards.
That's true. Yeah.
They have not replaced that in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty rough. Defensively is where the biggest gap is. Yeah, you're true. That's true.
All right.
Definitely on defense, I still would go offense or defensive line before linebackers, but I do have those. Yeah, those are really close.
Xander and I got into a heated conversation just before you came on.
That's Xander.
Now, I'm not going to pollute and lead the witness like I always do when it comes to me asking questions.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the follow-up here, so I'm not going to pollute the question.
All right.
I want you to give me your assessment of Howie Roseman when it comes to personnel decisions that he has made as general manager.
Forever or post Chip Kelly? Because
I'm asking you to fill it in.
He saw God after Chip Kelly, man. I don't know what happened, but he saw God after that. Look, we could always knock him for Justin Jefferson. And literally the Vikings laughed at you. And I'll never forget that. And that was terrible. That was horrible. They have never valued the linebacker position.
Is that Mike Zimmer laughing at him up there?
It was Mike Zimmer laughing. They were looking at the I'll never forget it. They're looking at their computers. They got them on the Zoom thing, and they're just like, "Oh, what? They really? No way!" It was like the same reaction that Jerry Jones had when CD Lamb fell to them. They're like, what are we? Huh? What the hell's going on here? Anyway, you're asking for a grade for Howie. What was the specific question?
Yeah, okay. If you want to put it in there, and that's great. What do you think of him as a talent evaluator?
I love him. I really do. I talk about it in baseball a lot because I talk a lot of Phillies coverage with Dave Dombrowski and Howie Roseman.
That guy's Dave Dombrowski.
Dave Dombrowski has done it in 3 different places, and he's been to 5 World Series. I think he's won 3 of them, including Miami. We're
Detroit, Boston,
Detroit and Boston as well. Yeah. In terms of going to a World Series, winning in Boston as well, going to another one in Philly. So that's the resume there for the non-baseball fans. He's really good at his job. He's a Hall of Famer.
Dave is arguably, I think he's better than Theo Epstein.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now here's
he's done it in more places.
Now Epstein did it in Chicago and Boston. They're going to put statues up of him in those places.
Sure.
But I mean, this is the same guy when he got up to Detroit and they said that they wanted to trade Miguel Cabrera, and somebody goes, "Well, Miguel Cabrera is just a fat drunk," and Dave Dombrowski goes like this. Well, if that's what a fat drunk looks like, I'll take a Triple Crown hitter and I'll put him in Detroit. And that was the history of him going to Detroit. They gave up on a 20-year-old kid you saw knock the cover off the baseball against the Yankees in the World Series.
Yeah, and he put Roger Clemens over his knee when he was like 19.
Miguel Cabrera could easily be one of the top 5 right-hand hitters in baseball in the last 20 years.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, Crown winner, winner of batting titles, home run titles, RBI titles, hit titles.
Yeah,
you could put him in the
easy.
He may not be Pujols, but he's right there.
When you talk about 20 years, definitely, without question, no doubt about it. How about this for Howie Roseman? Right now, the crowning achievement is obviously the deepest team probably in the history of the NFL winning a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I mean, I think one of the only other teams that really competes with that is the 2010 Packers, who had like 18 guys on IR during the season.
So
like, that's insane.
Him more credit than Doug on that one.
Oh, absolutely. Because everywhere he turned, there was some semblance of talent when it came to the roster. I give Doug a hell of a lot of credit, certainly, but when it comes to constructing the overall roster, he did a pretty good job doing that. And then he was back in the Super Bowl and potentially, one awful holding call away, defensive holding from winning another Super Bowl with another head coach and another quarterback. Howie was the constant in that. That's something I can't easily forget. And the Eagles are doing something similar right now with Nick Sirianni that I find very interesting. And it's unconventional. I think we could agree, Sills, that you have a coach with basically no power. You like his personality, and that's why he's still here. You have a coach that you hired as a head coach and play caller and game planner. Quickly into that experience, he said, maybe I shouldn't be calling plays. So he took that responsibility away from himself, and that has continued to go down, as you and I have talked about. And now he's just kind of here as a figurehead, it feels like, where you don't even – you have a quarterback that can't even say what he has done well in terms of his – what was the term? Adaptability. Hey, Jalen, tell me about Nick Sirianni's adaptability, and what does it say about him? No, really, say something nice about your head coach. Oh, okay. He's got a good message. Like, what?
Like, what? You caught me.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me, it goes like this. It goes, Howie Roseman's the constant when it comes to the talent that he has evaluated. He is not perfect. He has had his mistakes. You can certainly talk about Justin Jefferson. You can certainly talk about the lack of value this team has seemed to always have at the linebacker position. But overall, I am blown away with Howie Roseman. Now, it was unconventional to put him in the janitor's closet for that Chip Kelly year, that final year of Chip Kelly, just as it's unconventional to have Nick Sirianni as the head coach of this team with what seems to be no real power. But they won a Super Bowl before with unconventional wisdom, and they're trying to do it again.
Let me help you out on something here.
Is this where you lead the witness?
This is where we're going to go here now.
Okay.
Okay. Can you name me one guy he's drafted in the secondary One guy, safety, corner. If he's so talented, name me one impact player he's drafted in the last whatever years he's ever been in charge of personnel. Name me one.
Impact player. Well, he didn't draft.
Little Shepard wasn't under him.
No, Little Shepard was not under him. Neither was Sheldon, obviously. Same year. Yep. I got nothing. Secondary, that's kind of been a problem.
Name me a linebacker in the last 20 years.
Their best linebackers have been undrafted guys, which is just insane. No, you're absolutely right. There's
Name
blind
me
spots.
An edge rusher that they've drafted in 20 years. Okay, Brandon Graham. But that was an Andy Reid guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say Josh Sweat is an impact player by any means.
He's not bad.
Yeah, but this is where the fortunate thing is that that's not the only job. Like, okay, it's nice, but if you're able to go out there
and name me a receiver that he's drafted in the last 20 years, not named Devontae Smith.
Yeah. So that's bad, but that's not the only part of his job. And I get what you're saying.
I think he's spectacular at contracts. I think he's spectacular at finding guys deep on rosters like Gardner Johnson to bring in and help. I think he's great at other people's finished products or unfinished products that are on other rosters. And he's spectacular at the money and constructing deals. But when it comes to telling me impact players, just because you have a boatload of kids back there this year, we'll see how that shakes out of the popcorn can. Okay, we'll find out how that thing looks.
If one of those guys don't hit, that'll be really bad. I get it. In either Cooper DeJean or obviously Quinyon Mitchell. But for Howie, drafting hasn't been his strong suit when it comes to the skilled positions, really. Miles Sanders, pretty damn good, absolutely. But when it comes to the cornerbacks and all that, they focus obviously on interior defensive linemen, and they focus on offensive linemen. And a lot of that goes to the development of Jeff Stoutland, what he's able to do with a lot of these products.
It went with Howard Mudd, too.
It went with Howard Mudd. Looking at Jordan Mailata in that case, in that regard, is great. But Howie, yes, when it comes to the draft, it has not been phenomenal at the positions that you mentioned. When it comes to filling those holes in free agency or filling those holes with trades, talk about contracts. He does a wonderful job.
Slay's an all-pro. Yeah. Getting Reddick, what you got out of him, I'm not debating that. For other people's unfinished products that he sees something in. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the college personnel that you go into the draft every April and sit there and try to tell me that you're building a roster when you have one-year contracts every other year on defense. That's not true. Mm-hmm. You have a revolving door every year on that side. Jeff Curry even said it's not sustainable, that style of being able to build a defense or continuity on that side of the ball. As you know, Mark, teams that go into seasons that make the least moves are the teams that are going to be in the building to make the conversation about being a Super Bowl contender, not making wholesale changes, changing coordinators, changing one-year deals out. I mean, I'll give this to the Eagles and what they do. There's no question the D-line and the O-line has been a priority under Jeffrey Lurie. That was completely the reverse under Norman Braman. Completely the opposite. And that has been a priority, and that's the thing that keeps you in the game. Let me sneak one last one in.
Sure.
How about when it comes back to quarterback and developing of quarterback? How do you think they've developed Jalen Hurts and developed Carson Wentz, in your opinion, with both players? And it almost looks like the same kind of issues. One guy struggled when it came to picking up blitzes, holding the ball too long. Gee, funny. Looks like Hurts has the same kind of issues right now. Holding on to the ball too long, not seeing blitzes. How do you think they do when it comes to developing of quarterbacks since Howie Roseman has been in charge?
Well, since the quarterback factory I know that got a lot of attention some years ago there. It's not great. I mean, look, you could look at the end result and you could say Carson Wentz was the MVP before he got hurt. You could look at the end result with Jalen Hurts, the year they went to the Super Bowl. They lost the Super Bowl, but before he got hurt that year, he was the MVP.
You're right. They changed him after the Rams game.
They changed after the Rams game, exactly. So for me, I look at it like that. When it comes to the end result, yeah, you could say, well, they drafted these young guys and they both became MVP caliber players, and then things started to taper off rather quickly, unfortunately. I think a lot of the stuff changed for Carson Wentz because of the situation, not necessarily of what the organization was doing. I would have loved for John DeFilippo to stay there with him, but if you're truly a great quarterback that can be developed, one coaching change isn't going to derail you for an entire career like it did for Carson Wentz. The real thing for him was that his backup quarterback won a Super Bowl. And then he had to come back and be the guy. And that didn't work out too well, unfortunately. Then the year after, he gets hurt again, and Nick Foles takes them back into the playoffs. Nick Foles probably ends up in the NFC Championship game, probably in the Super Bowl again if that ball doesn't go through Alshon Jeffrey's hands against the Saints in New Orleans. So Carson Wentz, that whole situation was very odd, and I don't expect to see something like that again. But for Jalen Hurts, the overall development, let's just focus on the development of Jalen Hurts as opposed to the end result for the Eagles season and the end result for how the offense looks at the end of the year. The overall development, if you're Kellen Moore, you have to have Jalen Hurts improve drastically at reading the defense. No question about that. You have to have progressions with him. And if he's not adapting to be able to go through his progressions quickly, well, then you need to turn it almost into a Nick Foles situation, get back to that RPO and go to that one read wonder type of thing. Oh, it's the same thing that Jim Harbaugh did in San Francisco all those years ago when he told Alex Smith and then Colin Kaepernick, if it ain't there on one read, bye-bye, see ya, you go get those yards. So if they have to break it down to that, fine. Is that going to help the development of Jalen Hurts? No, but it's going to help the team win football games. I hope it doesn't come to that. I don't think it will come to that. But overall, reading a defense, that's something he has to improve upon. The turnovers, he has to improve upon, of course. But I think absolutely one thing that has to be on Kellen Moore's list is situational football. Don't throw it down the field when you're up 4 points in the fourth quarter with 8 minutes to go against the Seahawks on 1st and 10, and you got a wide open running back. In this case, I believe it was Kenny Gainwell, open at the line of scrimmage. Sometimes a single is nice, Jalen. Teach him, coach him into situational football. That will make him a better quarterback. And yeah, sure, obviously, at the same time, it'll make the Eagles a better football team as well. But the development has to come with some sustained coaching message from the sidelines. And that's something that the Eagles haven't had over the last 2 seasons. Hopefully they get it back now with Kellen Moore.
Don't you agree that the identity of the front office when it comes to picking coaches, whether it's a head coach or assistant coaches, Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, you get NFL jobs. Last year, you had 2 guys get blown out. They're hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the lack of development when it comes to certain positions on the team, because how can you have 4 coordinators for a guy who's only started 3 years in the building and think you're going to be consistent? I mean, how are you developing linebackers? How are you developing coordinators? How are you developing cornerbacks? How are you developing those kind of players on that side of the ball? Hey, Jeff Stoutland's in the building since Chip Kelly. Sure. Okay. That's fantastic. He's a benchmark guy, but there's not one coach in that building that has any tenor when it comes to the amount of years outside of Sirianni. And Sirianni's not developing anybody. Think about that for a second. You take a look at Kansas City. Kansas City's had the same play caller in Patrick Mahomes' ear. You don't think that plays a factor? Matt LaFleur being in Jordan Love's ear when Brady had Josh McDaniel in his ear for a decade and a half? That plays a factor in continuity. How about Donovan McNabb and even Andy when he had him there for 10 years? I mean, you can't keep changing these guys out and think you're going to develop this guy when you have different terminology, different plays, different type of schemes, different things you're trying to do. That's not going to be productive for Hurts. It's kind of a bumpy ride in development. Don't you agree?
I mean, absolutely. That's why I talk about the vicious cycle of if all this goes well, and let's say you get back to another Super Bowl.
You're back in it again next year looking for new people.
Kellen Moore is somewhere else, and somebody else is bringing in their ideas, or you retain somebody from Kellen Moore's staff that then becomes the play caller, and then you're in the Brian Johnson situation again. It's a pretty insane thing that the Eagles are doing right now. And I still think they're going to have a really good year, but when you get to the playoffs, if you get that early exit, that's still going to mean the end of Nick Sirianni.
You think it's bumpy early, though?
I don't think it's going to be bumpy early. I think the Eagles have to come out and they have to come out on fire. There can't be any excuses when it comes to I need to get on the same page with Kellen Moore. The only real problem that I would go, oh, okay, I could see that, is if Cam Jurgens needs a game or two to understand what it takes to have the communication with his quarterback. That's the only thing I'm really defensively speaking. There's going to be some growing pains here, but you'll be saved a little bit, I think, by the fact that Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, I think, are almost guaranteed to have great starts to the year. That, to me, has not been the problem. The problem has been what happens at the end of the year. So I think the defense will start out well, and I think the offense will be kicking on cylinders with these weapons. And look, it sucks that it's in Brazil, and there's a lot of factors that go into that, but that can't be an excuse either. I do think the Eagles are going to have a good year, but I don't see them, with the way the coaching staff is constructed, for them to be a true Super Bowl contender by the time the playoffs roll around.
Well, breaking news, I just wanted you to realize one of the reasons that Nick was retained was because, just like with Chip, there was a Slurpee machine left behind. There's a cannoli machine. Now they're at NovaCare Center. And by the way, I hear it's chocolate chip. So just so you know, if you're ever invited by Bob Lang and his henchmen, make sure you try the cannoli with the chocolate chip, because they got a nice shell. Don't eat the ones on the tray. Get it right out of the machine.
Yeah.
You know, because you're a good paisan. You understand this.
They got to be warm.
The shell's the key on a cannoli.
The rigatti's got to be warm. You know what I mean? You swipe your finger through it first.
Yeah, right. You can't have that day-old cannoli, man. The day-old cannoli, it sounds like an egg roll.
There's nothing better when they hand you the box, the pastry box, right? And you take it and it's warm. That's so beautiful.
You got those Italian cookies, or you got pizza free. You got any of that in there. You just open the box and you smell, and you're like, the lemon cookies, like that kind of stuff. Oh, my God. Then you look over and you go, you know what? Since I'm here at the deli, can you get me a little bit of prosciutto?
Yeah.
I got to take the prosciutto home with me, man.
You don't want to be rude.
Like you wouldn't believe. She loves prosciutto, man.
I've been binging, and the All-Star break, I always binge something, and it's like 2 shows. I've been watching like Stanley Tucci in Italy, man. That's like the greatest thing. And the show Alone on the History Channel about like outdoor survival. It's awesome. But Stanley Tucci went to Parma, and they were making the prosciutto and all that. Oh my God. Madonna me. It was amazing.
So you watched Pajama Night the other night, huh?
Pajama Night? What?
Pajama Night, the All-Star game. It was like Pajama Night. It was like Pajama Night at the All-Star game with the baseball guys. Why don't you just go back to your hometown gear? Where's the hometown gear? The hometown gear is the old school way of doing it.
I do like that Bryce Harper was championing that cause, but I will say I thought the uniforms this year were pretty awesome.
Oh my God, you love the ruse.
This year, I like
the ruse. You match the top and the bottom, and you get the kid and everybody.
I like the uniforms, but I wouldn't mind going back to wearing your team's uniform.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely great, folks. Don't forget to catch him. He kicks off our broadcasting here on JAKIB Sports each and every single morning. Buona fortuna to you, my friend. I appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. Boca de Lupa. See you, buddy.
You got it. That is our friend, Marc Farzetta. Please hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.